My name is Rick Petherbridge, and I'm here to talk tennis. And today we're talking about the men's side at the BNP Paribas. I'm really excited. I'll be going and I'll be there from Friday to Wednesday. I think most people call it the fifth Grand Slam for a good reason. It's an amazing tournament, great players, really nice facility. But let's jump into it, and we'll start with the men's side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about different categories. My first category is what I call favorites. And these are the three players that I think are most likely to win the BNP Paribas. And I'll go through each one and sort of talk about why I think they're the favorite. So the most obvious choice is Rafa Nadal. Of course, the reason that he would be the favorite is that he has had a great start to 2022. He is 15-0. He's undefeated. He won the Australian Open. And in the final, he beat Daniel Medvedev in a very close 5-set match. He recently played in Acapulco, and he won Acapulco. So he's playing really well, and he's already played Medvedev, who would be his closest competitor twice, and beaten him both at the Australian Open final and then in the semifinal of Acapulco. And of course, he is the leader now with 21 Grand Slam titles. And he's won the BNP Paribas 3 times, although the last time that he won was in 2013. So it's been a while. But he clearly is comfortable on the hard surface out in Indian Wells, and he has won Indian Wells 3 times in the past. So in my opinion, Nadal would be the clear favorite, given that he's out to such a fast start this year. And of course, I think he realizes, because of his age, that he really has to get the most out of this year. And maybe next year. And he also understands that, he's been given a sort of a special opportunity, right? Because Djokovic did not play in the Australian Open, and he is not going to play at Indian Wells unless he gets vaccinated. Of course, for you who have followed the news, you know that it does appear that Djokovic will play in Roland Garros, right? And that changes a lot for Nadal. But anyway, it's clear that Nadal has had an opportunity to take the lead in terms of total Grand Slams won. And of course, Federer is still recovering from an injury. So he's the only one from the top 3 guard that have dominated tennis for the last 15 years that's playing now. And I think he understands what a big opportunity this is for him. I believe he's the clear favorite. Couple more statistics about Nadal. He's currently ranked number 4 in the world. And I think I mentioned this. He's undefeated so far with a 15-0 start this year. Now, my second favorite is going to be Medvedev. And he just became the number 1 ranked player in the world. I believe a week ago. And this is a big deal. Look, between Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, they have dominated men's tennis. Medvedev has been so good and so consistently good. And of course, Federer's injured now, and Djokovic hasn't played this year because of the vaccination issue. So he has now moved into the number 1 ranking, and he's deserved it. He's played very consistently, particularly on hard court events. Won the U.S. Open last year, preventing Djokovic from having the all 4 slams in a calendar year. He is off to a pretty good start this year. He is 12-3. However, 2 of those losses came to Rafael Nadal, one in the final of the Australian Open and the other in the semifinal of Acapulco. So other than Nadal, Medvedev's only lost once. And I think he's the clear second choice in terms of a favorite to win Indian Wells. He plays very well on hard court, but he's never won Indian Wells in the past. So this would be a breakthrough for him. And I think for him too, he needs to show that he can beat Nadal on hard court, right? That would be the surface that he would have the best opportunity. And I think he took a little bit of a beating in Acapulco. The Australian Open was a very close match. Could have gone either way, but Nadal won easily in 2 straight sets in Acapulco. And knowing Medvedev, the kind of player he is, he would definitely would be very important to him to beat Nadal the next time they play. So Medvedev is my second choice. Now my third favorite is going to be Rublev. And the reason I'm choosing Rublev, I normally wouldn't put him in this category. I would think that Tsitsipas or Zverev would be more favored than him, but he's gotten off to a great start this year. And he has just won 2 tournaments recently, one in Marseille, right? And the second one in Dubai. And he is ranked 6th in the world. He has a 14-2 record for 2022. And he is really on a hot streak, having won 2 tournaments back to back. So I'm going to jump him ahead of players that are higher ranked than him, like Tsitsipas and like Zverev, just because I think he's on a roll. And I think when he's playing his best tennis, he's capable of beating anybody. And that's why I have him in the third favorite spot. So those are my favorites. I'm going to now move on to what I call contenders, right? And these are people that aren't as highly favored, but definitely have the resume. And if they're playing well, and especially if the draw opens up a little bit for them, have a real opportunity to win Indian Wells. So my first contender is Tsitsipas. He is ranked number 5 in the world. He's had a pretty good year so far in 2022. He's 14-5. Hasn't won any tournaments this year, but he's young. He's still improving, and he seems like someone who's destined not only to win Grand Slams, but to win these Master 1000 series like Indian Wells in Miami coming up. So I would put him as my number 1 contender. And then behind him in the number 2 spot in terms of a contender at Indian Wells, I'm going to put Berrettini. Berrettini is ranked 7 in the world. He has not had a great start, but a good start to 2022. He's 7-5. He had a pretty good showing at the Australian Open. And he's a player that can play his best on the biggest stages. He's clearly hard court suit him best, right? Or grass, because he's got a huge serve and he's got a huge forehand. Isn't as mobile, doesn't cover as much court or play as defensively as these other guys we're talking about. But because his serve is so big and his forehand is so big, he can basically dominate a match just from the serve, right? And when he's serving his best, you really just have to beat him in the tiebreak. His serve is that good. And I feel like he's still improving, right? His backhand is clearly his weakness, right? And he slices it a lot. And the better players can take advantage of that. And of course, they can out rally him because they move better. So for him, he has to keep the points short, and he has to be able to hit a lot of winners, winners off the serve and winners off the forehand side. But he did make it to the semifinal of Australia, and he is someone who's played very well in the bigger events. And like I said, if his serve is on, he can just serve his way through a match. So that's why I have him as my number 2 contender. Moving on, I'm going with, in the 3rd spot, Hurkacz. He is ranked number 10 in the world right now. He's gotten off to a pretty good start in 2022. He's 8-4. Now, look, normally I'll say, normally I'd have Zverev ahead of Hurkacz. But Hurkacz is playing well right now. Won some big matches already this year. And he's a player that I think is still improving. He just got into the top 10, and I think he's a guy that can work his way up to the 7 or 6 spot. Tall guy, big serve, great power game. And look, if the draw opens up for him, right? And by that I mean if one of the favorites loses early, a Nadal or a Medvedev, that could give Hurkacz the opportunity to go ahead and win at Indian Wells. Okay, so now you have my 3 contenders, and I'm now going to move on to my next category, and I'm calling these the young guns. And these are players that are, 20 and under, that haven't won a Grand Slam yet, haven't won Masters 1000s yet, but they've won big matches, and they're clearly going to. They're the next generation of players. At some point, Nadal and Djokovic are going to retire, and these guys are going to be winning Grand Slam events. So my number 1 gun is Sinner, right? He's 20 years old. He is now ranked 11 in the world, so he's almost made it into the top 10. He had a good start this year, right? He is 9-2 so far. Played well. His 2 losses, one came to Hurkacz, so that's a top 10 player, and the other one came to Tsitsipas. So if you've only lost to those 2 guys, that means that you only lose to people in the top 10. That's someone who's a great player and playing well, right? And of course, he's young, and he's just going to get better. I mean, physically, he's still going to get stronger. He's still going to get fitter and have more stamina. So he is definitely someone to watch. My other young gun is Carlos Alcaraz. He's a Spaniard. He is 18 years old. And I saw an interesting statistic about Alvarez. He is the youngest player to make it into the top 20. So that means he got there faster than Federer, he got there faster than Nadal, and he got there faster than Djokovic. And getting there faster than Nadal is a big deal because Nadal was an early bloomer, unlike Djokovic. And I believe Nadal won the French when he was just 18 years old, right? But so that's saying a lot, right? If you break into the top 20 at 18 years old and you do it before those three guys, Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, that's a huge accomplishment. And I was at the US Open last year, and I had the pleasure to see him play, I think 3 matches, and I was just so impressed with his game, right? And the thing that impressed me most was his all-around ability, right? So by that, I mean, he can really do everything. He's got a good forehand, a good backhand, a good serve. He moves really well, right? Great mobility on the court, can play defensive tennis if he has to. And one of the things that I really impressed me most about Alcaraz is his mental attitude, right? I think it's common for younger players to get a little more emotional on the court, right? So when things are going well, they're little, they get maybe too high, too too loud, and when things get bad in the court, they get too down. And I'm just really impressed with his sort of mental toughness and the way he, just works his way through a match. Doesn't ever seem to get frustrated, even when he's down. Plays hard, right? Like what we're seeing from Nadal, but Nadal's an experienced champion, right? To see someone have that mental toughness already at age 18, very impressive, right? So he's had a good year. He was 7-1. He lost to Berrettini in the Australian Open. So his only loss came to the number 7 player in the world. Pretty impressive. And I'm going to go out a limb and say Alcaraz wins a Master 1000 this year, right? I'm not saying he's going to win Indian Wells. I'm saying before the end of the year is over, he's going to break through at one of these Master 1000 events. And it wouldn't shock me if he won a Grand Slam. He's that good. He's that talented. And he has the sort of overall game with no weaknesses that make him a very difficult player to beat. So, if you get a chance to see him at Indian Wells, please, take the time out. He's someone that if you see now, you're going to be able to say, right? I saw him when he was 18 years old, before he'd won any of these Masters or 1000 events or Grand Slams. And he is somebody that clearly will win Grand Slam events. He also has a really good coach. His coach is Juan Carlos Ferrero, who of course won several Grand Slams, including the Roland Garros. Okay. I always like to talk about the American players. And of course, a lot of us, were all, we lived through the feast of the Sampras, Agassi, Courier, Chang years, when Americans were just dominating these events, that we see them win Indian Wells all the time. And, it's been a little bit of a famine now, right? The last American was Andy Roddick, who won the US Open, and that was like 20 years ago. And it's been, I think, almost as long since any American man won Indian Wells. So here are my picks in terms of the Americans that have the best chance, and we'll start off with Riley Opelka. He's ranked 17 in the world. He's had a decent 2022 so far. He's 11-4. He's been moving up in the rankings consistently, right? He's a giant. He's like 6'11", has a huge serve, has a huge forehand. And it'll be interesting to see, right, now that he's a top 20 player, can he move into the top 10, right? And, we've seen in the past some of the tall players like John Isner haven't had the stamina and the mobility to beat, the top 5, the top 10 players in the world, despite having an amazing serve. And I believe that Riley Opelka is a little more athletic than John Isner. And so I think he could have a higher ceiling. And it'll be really interesting to watch him this year and next year to see if he can take his game to that next level, right? That means improving his backhand, improving his return of serve, and most importantly, improving his mobility and his defensive skills, right? And again, when you're somebody that has as big a serve as Opelka does and as big a forehand, small improvements in those other areas can be the difference. So I'm really enthusiastic about him, and I'm curious to see how much further, right? He's already 17 in the world. He can take his game, right? And so the next big step would be if he can get in the top 10. And I think that's a possibility for him. And I think that it could even happen this year, right? But we'll see if he continues improving as much as he's improved in the last couple years. Now, the next American player that I see is, of course, Taylor Fritz. He is ranked number 20 in the world. He is his one-loss record is 7-4 so far for 2022. He had a good showing at the Australian Open. And I think the issue with Taylor Fritz, because he's been around a while, is has he reached his ceiling? And by that, I mean, has he taken his game about as far as he can go? I think he's like 24 years old. And you know what? In today's tennis, that's not old, right? He still has plenty of time to make improvements. But what we do see with a lot of players is they start to level off around 25 or 26. And so these next couple of years are really important for Taylor Fritz. Is he going to be able to make that move from the top 20 to the top 10? Does he have that much improvement left in his game? He has a good overall game. He's a good mover. He's a good athlete. So it'll be really interesting to see. And of course, it'd be really exciting as an American if we could get 2 players back in the top 10. I mean, that would be huge. Imagine if Riley Opelka and Taylor Fritz are able to make that jump. Now you've got a couple of players that have legitimate opportunities at these big events. So I'll be keeping my eyes very carefully on them. Okay, let's talk about some other things that are going to be issues at the Indian Wells. So Indian Wells still has a vaccine required. So that means that even though Djokovic entered the tournament as a player, he will not be allowed to play. That's my understanding. And but like I said earlier, it does appear as the number of infections decrease, that by the time Roland Garros comes around, that he will be allowed to play that France is allowing unvaccinated players and people to come into France, and that he should be able to play. And of course, that changes the whole mix. He won 3 Grand Slams and almost won a 4th one, just losing to Medvedev in the final of the US Open. And if he comes back full strength, you would expect that he could beat Nadal even at the French. So that'll be something really interesting to see. Another sort of interesting thing having to do with current events is that, we're going to have some matches where Russian players or players from Belarus are playing players from Ukraine. And, given the war in Ukraine, that's, it'll be interesting to see how much of that comes into a tennis match at Indian Wells, right? And just to give you an example, Indian Wells is, so next to each player's name, they give the country, right? Well, if you're from Russia or you're from Belarus, they will not have the country's name next to your name, right? Because of the Ukrainian war. And on the women's side, Svitolina, who was born in Ukraine, has said that she may not play Russian players. So we'll see. Again, this is just an area where current events spill over into tennis and sometimes can have interesting consequences. So as a fan and somebody who's going to be there at the matches, it'll be interesting to see. And it'll be also interesting to see, look, on the men's side, 2 of the better players are Russian. Medvedev, clearly, in my mind, is the second favorite to win. And Rublev, in my mind, is the third favorite to win. And it'll be interesting to see if, Medvedev has his own public relation problem. He's a very opinionated man who has said things that have offended fans in the past. But it'll be interesting to see if Russian players are treated less respectfully than players from other countries. And I'll be curious to see how this plays out. Anyway, that's my take on Indian Wells on the men's side. I cannot wait to have this tournament start. And like I said, I will be there for about a week. And I can't wait to see these tournaments. It's going to be great. See you there.